Hey guys, yeah, this is episode 18 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. Quite an eventful weekend overall, I do have to say. We've had an upset along the way. We've also had a side be buried, I guess is the best way of describing it. We'll be talking about that game last. But yeah, overall, some big results for certain sides. Still, in each of the pools, there is a side that are yet to have a defeat in this Rugby World Cup. So it's going to be intriguing seeing how these last two rounds of the group stage go.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really exciting to see what actually happens, of course, in terms of the rest of the competition. But for now, in terms of round three, we saw a lot of exciting games. First, starting with Italy versus Uruguay, the game did finish 38 points to 17. Uruguay, they looked pretty impressive, in the opening stages of this game, really in that first half overall. They were actually the team. You can never say they were dominating the game, but they definitely had the point advantage to Italy. So just for just that alone is just it's a pretty good from a Uruguayan perspective. But of course, the Italians came back into it in the second half, kind of a bit of a more of a resurgence to say the least, and obviously kind of got that bonus point, which was much needed in this case because they're obviously going to be facing the All Blacks next week. But yeah, just what do you think about the game overall?
I think that for that game, Italy have shown moments in it why they are a contender in this group. Like at the end of the day, if the All Blacks beat Italy next week, but they don't receive that bonus point, if there's any sort of upset in that Italy versus France game, I believe that the Italians may still just be able to edge it home in the group. And
Yeah.
it's whether or not that game up against the All Blacks in Italy is close. And I think that it's going to be a very important game for both of the sides. Both sides should go out firing. I'm hoping it's a lot closer than the next game that we saw, which was France versus Namibia. 96-0, the closest to 100 we have seen throughout this Rugby World Cup. France were on fire, but the big talking point for that game, of course, Antoine Dupont. He is injured.
Yeah.
I don't think that France should be worried. I think that opposition of the French should still be, because Luku has been a very good player for a wee while. Anytime he's had the opportunity, he has been able to show up, do well. And the saying one player doesn't make a team has been used quite a bit throughout the last couple of days. How do you see France going now that they've lost Dupont at this stage of the competition?
Yeah, look, I do actually think it's a massive blow to this French team. It's one of those where he is he's the core of what that French side does really in terms of the games in the style they play, their attacking set pieces. They run it all through him. So to lose him, it's a big blow in terms of that in terms of the I guess the level this French team can go and kind of being the best team in the world because going into this competition, just even before the tournament started, the French were seen as the favorites, and he is literally the main reason why. And for him, like, I mean, I think there was one commentator, I can't remember who it was, but he said, if he was to get injured, it could cripple, their chances, and it's happened. So it's one of those where I don't know what to think about it because again, we'll allude to this later on, but of course, with the Box lost, they're obviously now going to be most likely will now be facing the French in the quarterfinals. So it's it's going to be a huge game, that one, and definitely one that, yes, as a Bulk fan, I'm never going to underestimate the French. They're the home nation. They're going to be raw. They're going to be up for it 100%. But to lose someone like Dupont, it's a massive blow, and it's something which I just don't know how they're going to handle it because they've now lost their 9 and 10, like their first choice 9-10, which is for any team to lose their first 9 and 10, particularly France in your home, like the World Cup you're hosting. It's oh my gosh, I feel bad for them actually because the thing is that Dupont's one of those players where you never want to see him get injured. It's like there's like a few players in just terms of players who just play for different nations, even if you don't support them, you can obviously you respect them highly. He is up there with the very top. So for him to kind of not be available, I mean, I don't know, maybe up until the semi at latest. He's definitely not going to be available for the quarterfinal, but the semi is where he could be available, and then the final, of course, he'll hopefully be available in the time. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Righty, so now we move on to that Samoa versus Argentina game, which is almost the complete opposite to the
Yeah.
96-0 that we witnessed. A little bit closer, 19 points for the Argentines, 10 for Samoa. I'll be honest, first half, a little bit scrappy from both of the teams. We didn't really see the Pumas flowing the way that they were anticipated to throughout this Rugby World Cup competition. Samoa, once again, it was their discipline that was letting them down in the important moments. But Pool D's wide open. England have confirmed their spot. I feel like that's one thing everyone is in agreement of with the 3 wins from 3. Japan and Samoa, they are playing next week up against each other. They are both sitting on the 5 points. Argentina, after losing to England in their opening game, they're playing catch-up. They are on 4. They've got their game up against their South American rivals in Chile. So it's going to be an awesome group to see how it progresses. I feel like that and Pool C at the moment are the two that everyone's got their eyes. It's almost like a side gaze. They're looking at Pool B, going, of course, Ireland, South Africa, and then Pool A with the France, New Zealand scenario. But then they're also just looking over, going, I want to see what happens there between those teams. But what do you think of the game overall? Do you think Argentina are peaking at the right time? Because they haven't peaked yet, we've got to remember. 2 games remaining before the quarters. Can they get there into Los Pumas form that they need to?
I think it's one of those games where you can't really say the Pumas peaked because they had to really come back from that kind of like loss against the English. And again, that was really just a loss which not a lot of people expected happening. And in the fashion it happened, it was even what was kind of, what made it worse really in how it happened. But no, in this one they made it right. They obviously got the win overall. Baffelli was outstanding as normal, kind of what you expect in terms of, I guess, not carrying the team, but getting most of the points and kind of going for him, which is how they win games. It's how they've won games throughout the last year and going into this World Cup. So it's a sign where if Baffelli's in the right space of mind, then you're in a good shot, obviously, to win the game from an Argentinian perspective. But no, I think overall, just in terms of that first half, I completely agree with you where it was really just, a bit, both teams really just weren't the best. I don't know. They kept clashing. There was a few knock-ons. It wasn't really the best of rugby. But of course, in that second half, that's where it kind of opened up a bit. Both teams had a few chances in there. Again, we saw the Argentinians kind of press on further. With a few penalty kicks to themselves. But overall, I think it's a good game for good win for Argentina. Definitely something they can obviously build on going into the next one. Again, they are playing the likes of Chile, so it's one of those where I don't know. Did they rest a few players or did they just go full out and just get as many points as possible? So we'll see what happens.
It's a tricky decision, isn't it? Because you don't want to be that side that make too many changes and then I guess you kind of throw yourself off. The All Blacks, the Springboks, they seem to have one set side that they want up against the big games. Up against the other games, they do have that completely changed team. Argentina, I feel like a nice mix might be a good way of doing it rather than risking what we saw France do. But then the comment made by the French coach, he actually said, the players want to be out there on the field for every game. And it's trying to manage how much game time you give the players alongside that kind of risk and reward of how much is he going to add to that game for us. And the perfect example was Dupont with the fact now he could have added a lot more to the future games rather than that one up against Namibia.
And the thing is that going on to the next one, Georgia, Portugal. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the first draw we've had in this competition. Obviously being 18 points apiece. And it's something where, look, I'll be honest, because I was actually I actually arrived at the hotel in Paris when this happened. And I was actually having lunch, kind of watching the first half, and Georgia, they're just it's kind of what you expected. Georgia were definitely the favorite in the game. They kind of went about it, in the way you thought about it, and the try they got, pretty well worked try, I thought. The Portuguese, they just the fire lit under them, and they just they came back into the game, and I was actually pretty happy. I was actually like, wow, this is great for Portugal. I mean, this is a massive. This is massive for Portugal, by the way, guys. I'm really happy they got this because, again, we saw that Welsh game where they actually held the Welsh to kind of a very respectable scoreline. And then, this is, I think they did pretty well in this one. So for them to get a draw is, it's very impressive. So, just from a Portuguese perspective and for all the Portugal fans, they must be over the moon.
And they were so close to getting that first historic victory as well. But both
Exactly.
kickers missing those conversions that could have won them the game.
Uh,
But at the end, it just felt like it was the only right result was for both of the
exactly.
sides to take away some sort of points from the fixture. The Portuguese captain once again after the game saying about how much it means to the side to be there, and also the fact that they're trying to inspire that next generation of rugby
Yeah, I love
players
that. That's the
so
mentality.
that in about 10 years' time they can have a whole new depth of players. And that's what it's all about, trying to inspire those other guys. Because Portugal, don't get me wrong, they play great rugby, but outside of, I guess, Europe, you don't really get to see those games being broadcast. Like for
No,
us in New
not at all.
Zealand, unless they're playing a Southern Hemisphere side, maybe at a stretch someone like an Argentina, like we don't see them play South Africa, don't see them play the All Blacks. So
Yeah.
it would be nice to see Portugal get a few more games up against top class opposition, because we are learning slowly, like they're a little bit higher on those rankings than some
Yes.
people maybe anticipate if they were to play those games up against similar ranked opposition. But yeah, overall good game to watch. I actually said before that one did take place, it has potential to be a match of the weekend. And to a certain extent, some people still would say it was
No,
match
it
of
was
the
brilliant.
weekend, but
Yes.
it was another game later on that night that I think maybe, in terms of the
Yeah.
feel of a massive game, might have just snuck it.
Exactly. But before we get into that one, of course, there was England versus Chile, and that one was just a whitewash, to say the least. 71 points to nil, which is a very impressive scoreline from the English. And yeah, I mean, we've got to mention him. Harry Ondell made 5 tries. 5 tries. I was like, oh my gosh.
To go from not even featuring to now being the leading try scorer in the competition in one game,
exactly
ahead of
And
everyone else.
And you know what I'm so happy about is like I put him in my fantasy team. I put
Oh,
him in
you
my
would have
fantasy.
nailed it then. How many
Oh,
points is maximum that you
I
can
think.
get?
Well, I can look very quickly actually in terms of my fantasy. What he actually got me. Luckily, unfortunately, I didn't put captain on him, but yeah, he got me. Let me go into the round 3 because the round's finished now. He got me 128 points. So I mean, look, he had. I mean, I can go over his stats. He had 5 tries, 2 tackles, 89 carries, 6 line breaks, and yeah, he was impressive.
Did you say
Very.
89 carries or 89 carry meters? Is it?
Yeah, no, like carry, like it's like meters. Yeah, meters carried. It's just the way that they say it on here.
Mm.
But yeah, 89 carries. I mean, oh my god, like you'd just be holding the ball
Busy.
the whole time of the game. But maybe it must have been because he scored 5 tries. But no, but it's impressive because now obviously the English do face who are they left to face now? They have
They still have their game up
Samoa,
against Samoa, yep.
Samoa, right?
And that's
So I
going to
mean,
be
hey,
in 2 weeks' time, I believe.
I'm not trying to downplay Samoa here, but there's the real possibility. He could actually score a few tries more in that one. Again, he has to start, but we'll see what happens there. But it's obviously it's a great thing for England now because you always want this. I always think it's a good thing to have a lot of players stepping up because it now makes the decision for the coaches even harder. Obviously, now going into the quarterfinals, being like, okay, who are we going to put in that position? Because if I'm not mistaken, they have played Anthony Watson there as the 14, and it's one where I mean, am I wrong in saying that he is the 14? For
I
the
think
games they played?
they've dabbled in Johnny May too, haven't they?
Yeah.
In one of the other matches,
Has
I
he played as?
believe.
Yeah, you are right because I mean, normally they go with like what Johnny May is the 11, him as the
Yeah.
14, but they sometimes they kind of switch it around a bit. But I don't know. I actually think he could start in this one. I've been maybe this is very harsh to say, but I've never really been a huge fan of Johnny May, and I would love to see the combination of Anthony Watson and and Harry Ondell. So that's the combination I would like. That's the combination I would like personally to see. But I don't know if they'll do it or not. We'll see what happens. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens there. But anyway, let's get into the big one. Box versus Ireland. 8 points to 13. The Irish, they came up on top, and I was live to see that game. It was electric. The game, by the way, guys, it was absolutely electric. The atmosphere. I mean, going into it, like walking into the stadium, I mean, it was a sea of green, and it was like you couldn't tell. I mean, you could definitely tell there's a lot more Irish in the stadium compared to the box. But and yeah, no, it's just one of those where going into the game, I think a lot of people were just kind of you were nervous. You just didn't know what was going to happen. Like even I was nervous. I literally didn't know what the scoreline was going to be. In my prediction, I said it would be a very close scoreline, but I actually predicted within the 20s because I thought both teams would kind of be a bit more, I guess, open in terms of the play. But no, I was proven wrong for sure. Because this game was a lot more tense. It probably the best. Is this the best game? What would you say in terms of out of all the games you see? Would you say this was the best game? Because it had the level of a Rugby World Cup final, if you get what I mean. But would you class it as a game which you would look back in terms of, I don't know, like the highlights, for example, or would you look at another game like because for me, I've always said that it's either like it was always going to be like this game or the opening game really between France and New Zealand that would kind of stand out no matter what, going before the tournament began. So what do you think on that front?
Yeah, I think it would rank very highly. I think that in terms of highlights, you probably wouldn't find a huge amount of them in terms of the amount of tries that we did see, but the tries that we did get were very impressive from Mac Hansen and Cheslin Colby. Talked about parts so much about this game would definitely be the kicking tee for the South Africans, what they're going to do from here. I know that Hondre Pollard, Rassie Erasmus confirming that he will be playing up against the Tongans. The big question is how do they incorporate him, whether he's 12 or whether he's 10. But for this game in particular, I think from a chess match perspective of a rugby game, like both sides had adversity throughout their match early on for the lineouts of the Irish. They just couldn't find the men in the lock-in duo. So South Africa, they had that dominance just a little bit early on, but then that running game from the Irish, when they were starting to get that ruck speed going up like they know how to, that was putting the Springboks under pressure, who were also giving away a couple penalties in those breakdowns as well. It just had a little bit of everything. And I said it on the stream, if this ends up being the Rugby World Cup final, that match is going to be part of that story of this is what happened last time. What can both sides learn from that to be able to go on now to the final and win the Rugby World Cup? And I honestly feel like the Irish side, it's going to be a big pat on the back for them because going into this game, they came in as favourites, even though they were on a 15-match winning streak. Heading into this game, the last time that they played South Africa, they were able to beat them, and they've also had a couple wins over some very formidable sides throughout that winning streak. And this will just be a little bit more of a feather in the cap of someone like a Johnny Sexton, who I felt played the ringmaster role pretty well throughout that game, definitely because of the extra pressure, the extra power that would have been coming at them from the box. And both sides will still feel there were things they could have changed if they do rematch. I mentioned about it as well. These teams could play 5 times over 5 weeks, and you'd probably get a 2-3 split in terms of the winners. That is how close they seem to be matching up at the moment in the world of rugby. And it's perfect for the world rankings because 1 and 2, you don't want there to be that massive gap. You want it to be each and every game that the two sides play. You move on to the edge of your seat. You can't eat your beverage. Well, you shouldn't eat your beverage because that's glass. You have your snacks ready and you sit down knowing you're going to have a good game of rugby taking place. And that's what we got here. 13 points to 8, low scoring, real test match feel to it. But overall, both sides, there will be little faults in their performance that they want to work on. But I think, the result is about what we expected. We said it would be within 5 either way. And in this time, the Irish get it.
Yeah, no, look, it was just one of those games where I think, looking back at it now, just from a live, just literally seeing it as it happened, In that first half, I think the Irish are definitely the better team. I think they were hands down the better team against the Boks. They really controlled the momentum, really. And what they were really impressive in doing was is what you said, really, in terms of, kind of like the rush speed, in terms of like how they kept going for the middle of, kind of just, they attacked the middle. They made sure not to go wide because, the Boks, I guess, were just, they were good in those, in terms of those two areas, but in terms of the middle, they just kept pounding on them. And then, of course, a gap broke, and that's where, I think it was like what Bundy. Well, actually, no, it was Hugo Keane who actually found the first line break, and actually that did come out wide, but it came through an earlier play that went down the middle first. But again, you had these breaks in, and then of course you had Bundiaki's break, I believe. It was just, they did pretty well on that front. I mean, again, you could say probably the one negative from that first half was probably the lineouts, because I mean, a lot of the lineouts, you could say, I think they had 3 out of the 4 lineouts, the opening 4. I think they lost like 3 of them. I think the box stole 3 of them. So it was like that was probably the one area which they're a bit, I'm not gonna say weak on because it's definitely an area that can just easily improve on. But it's just something that they need to look back on in terms of the review. But no, I guess in terms of that second half, I thought the Bucks definitely came back into it. With that bomb squad. I actually do think they made an impact. They won a few penalties off the back, and obviously allowed the Bucks kind of move up the field. But again, even though even though they were winning penalties, it didn't matter because the Bucks obviously they decided to go for a lot of kicks in this game, and it just didn't. It panned out not to be the right decision. And it's one of those when you look back at it now, I think they lost the opportunity. Well, I mean, going off a try as well, they scored as well. They lost 11 points overall in this game, so they definitely had the opportunity to win this game by I'm not saying by ease, but they had they had the chances. And again, it's like one of personally, I would have said for the 3 penalties they took, I think 2 of them were probably the right decision to go for them. But then there was one, I think it was like probably the last one actually out of the 3 where they should have. Maybe it was the second one. I'm not sure, but I know it was the one where Flap the Cloak had where he just. They should have not given it. I think it was the second one actually. His Flap the Cloak's second one, so that would have been the third one where they should have just gone for the lineouts and just go all in, because the thing is the Bucks, like they decide not to pressure the Irish. And of course, when the Irish get that penalty kick later down in the game, you kind of seal the game. In all honesty, the Bucks were faced with a decision just to be, they won the penalty, got to kick it up now, finally go for it, in that final chance, and of course be stopped on the line, which is it's one of those where I think, like personally, if the Bucks had an early opportunity at the line, then they would have reshaped, regathered, knew okay, this is how they're going to approach it. Let's go for this route instead. That may have led to the try. You never know, but it's just one of those where it's interesting to see kind of like the decisions made in this game. But look, overall, I actually am not too fussed as a Bucs fan. I thought the Bucs did pretty well in this game. Like you said, it was a pretty intense game overall, and it was a great game to watch live in person. And just the atmosphere was great, by the way, guys, as well. The atmosphere was electric. The Irish fans, got to give it to them. They were amazing, obviously, to be there inside the stadium. They really feel the atmosphere of them, and of course, the singing that goes along with it. It was great. It was absolutely great to be there. But I guess moving on from this game, we'll then go on to I believe it's the Scotland Tonga one, which we actually didn't talk about beforehand. But the Scotland Tonga one, it's one of those where you kind of expect the game to be like this, but at the same time, it's one of those where I think a lot of players who we actually said beforehand in our preview, who said they needed to step up, actually did do that. And the main player was Duhan van der Merwe. I think he had a great game overall for the Scots, had a lot more time on the ball, had a lot more meters, which is kind of expected of him. And he made his presence known. But what do you think of the game overall?
I think that the concerns around Tonga's discipline, they were justified because they did have poor discipline in this game once again for the Tongans. And the problem is, like, other than that, like, they weren't going too badly throughout this game. It's just every once in a while they decide to do that silly penalty. Tamapoa was who decided to hit the guy in the head. But Scotland, they needed a win here. They needed the bonus point as well, just to make it a little bit more spicy for Group B. Have a bit more of a slight, I guess, poke of the stick at the Springboks, saying, hey, we're still here. We're here just in case you don't quite get past Tonga. Although at this stage, I have to say, Springboks versus Tonga, if the discipline is not there for the Tongans, that could be a much larger score than 45 points to 17. Definitely near the end of a Rugby World Cup competition. Scotland overall, like you mentioned, Duhan van der Merwe did very well. Blair Kinghorn, I felt, stepped up quite nicely at number 15. Finn Russell, we didn't really see a huge amount of. He had a couple of nice passes, but I believe that with the fact that Kinghorn's now stepping up at 15, that heavily helps the Scottish. It is just such a shame that they are in a group with the number 1 and number 2 ranked side in the world. What are you supposed to do?
I actually feel bad for them. It's the same case with Italy as well, in Pool A, because those two sides, in all honesty, I would actually put them in the quarterfinals. I think they definitely have the capability to be definitely 1 or 2 if it was the other side of it. But yeah, it's just the luck of the draw. I mean, not the luck of the draw, because this did happen ages
Oh,
ago,
about
even
7
before
years
the
ago, wasn't it?
7 years ago, probably. I mean, like, I'm looking at my watch here. Yeah, this happened probably 10 years ago. But yeah, no, it's just I just feel bad for them because again, Scotland actually have played pretty progressive rugby and very impressive rugby. Even before this World Cup started and going into this. Kind of group, you kind of did. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you kind of do expect them not to get to the next round because you have the two of the best teams in the world, like you said. But it's just been, it's an impressive result, of course, and this obviously allowed them to go into the next game against, Romania, get another bonus point victory, which is what I said is needed, and then obviously go into the Ireland game, and I guess hope they'll be going for a surprise there because I mean I'm trying to think, can they even progress now? I mean, it's pretty difficult for them to progress. I mean, it really comes down, I guess, to the box, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
if the Springboks, with them sitting on the 9 points at the moment, and Scotland sitting on 5, it means that the Springboks would have to not get a bonus point win over Tonga. And then if they did get the bonus win over Tonga, then I believe for Scotland, they would need to win both of their games, or their one game that they've got left up against the Irish after that Romanian game, also with a bonus point. And points differential, it will come into it as well. And sometimes, that maths and knowing how much you need to do can sometimes be the downfall of sides. We've actually seen that in the past, how teams need to win by a certain margin. They don't manage to do so. That Crusaders game in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman up against the Rebels.
Exactly.
Hit the brain, yep. That one. One that comes to mind.
I was so happy when that happened. But I mean, as a Blues fan, as most of you know, I was so happy they didn't reach it. So happy because it's the one trophy they haven't won, which I can just be like, yes, the Blues got that. The Blues got that one. But we have to mention the Blues somehow in this video, guys. As most of you know,
we were going to get round to them.
Exactly.
Stage. What do we think of Finlay Christie at the moment, matching up with the other nines in New Zealand, Tim?
Gosh, we could do a whole just video on the Blues, guys. I mean, I think that we should just do that for the future. But no, look, going into the last game, of course, this is the one which we literally just watched here, guys, and the Welsh they blew right past the Wallabies, and with a very convincing scoreline of 40 points to 6. I just look, I feel bad. I feel actually really gutted really for the Wallabies in this, and they mentioned that word a lot actually in their post-match interviews. But I just feel a bit sad for them. It's one of those where you look at the Wallabies and they're just they've made so many changes going into this Rugby World Cup here, and again we've questioned it even before. It was the right timing to do a lot of these changes. Will it work out? And again, obviously it hasn't worked out, and for what this result tells. But before we get into the Wallabies, because we can talk a lot about them, but let's first give credit to the Welsh because they were outstanding in this game, like outstanding. And just in terms of the Welsh performance, what did you think of it?
I think they did everything that they needed to in this game because they took their 3-pointers to build up that pressure when the Australians were all disciplined. They also managed to get themselves a couple nice tries. Davis early on, I felt he had a very good game at number 9. Also alongside that, though, Gareth Anscombe making his way off the bench due to this injury of Dan Biggar, which hopefully is nothing too serious. Although, even if it is, it seems like Anscombe will be able to handle that pressure. He did very well throughout that game. And then also to Luke Falatau, he's looking physical, getting ready to go.
Great
for those quarterfinals. Even Jack Morgan as well. Like the captain, he's very underrated, I think, for what he can do for Wales. Mainly because, like, to be honest, if you were to say, name the Welsh captain, I don't think many people would guess Jack Morgan unless they had the team sheet in front. And even if you did, you probably wouldn't say his name.
Exactly.
But, he did very nicely, helped set up that first try of Davis off a nice line-out set play.
Oh, that was a great try. Great try.
Well, the Wallabies just weren't in it, though, for that second half. It was as if they had left.
Yeah.
They wanted to get in it, but every time drop ball, penalty conceded, and then just in the end, it became to the point of being comedic. They get the ball back and Nick White kicks it into touch when he's 1 metre from the touchline, and then it's a Welsh line out, and it's like, why? What's going on? But I think Karevi, he wouldn't be happy with his performance. I think he really struggled big time.
I agree.
And it pretty much summarised it when he was almost falling over his own feet and then dropped the ball inside of the 22 when no one made contact. And it was
Yeah, it's
like,
like
yep.
he had like 3 players to the left of him. He's like, I'm gonna go by myself and do it again. Of course, you drop the ball. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like, just pass the ball to the left. But yeah, look, it's one of those where my dad actually mentioned this, and I thought it was probably, yeah, now looking back at this, probably correct in saying like where the Wallabies were just playing, individuals. They were just a team of individuals on the field there compared to the Welsh, and it's a harsh thing to say, but it's how it kind of looked, from I guess from our point of view. But it's yeah, it's just it's devastating because again, oh gosh, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen it, by the way, guys, there was obviously the post match review on, because I watched it on Stan Sport, by the way, guys. So I was watching the Stan Sport commentary throughout the game, and of course they had the post match review, with the likes of the whole cast they have and Sonny Bill, and Sonny Bill just literally, he went off, kind of just he gave his honest opinion, really, from a player perspective. He said that if I knew that my coach was obviously taking interviews with Japan before the World Cup started, that would obviously be in my head and all that, and I wouldn't kind of go to the end of the earth really for him. So it's interesting because like I actually do agree with him in that sense, but again, it's one of those where we haven't. I'm not saying he's wrong, by the way, in what he said, but I feel like we also can't just assume. Like like I would like to hear if Eddie Jones actually said like look, just give just say it if it's happened or not, because if it hasn't happened, then this is like this is a load of just there's nothing really to talk about in this sense. But if it has happened, then whoa, I mean that's like there's a lot to kind of break down in that sense. And yeah, it's a tough call for the Wallabies because again, he's come in obviously into this job, following Dave Reddy, who, in my honest opinion, I was actually very shocked when they sacked him. I was very shocked when they happened because he was actually gaining kind of a bit of a momentum with the Wallabies, and I think he beat the Welsh in his last game, if I'm not mistaken, before he got sacked in Wales. Like that was like literally, I think, his last game for the Wallabies. So it just shows you where like it's kind of gone all down. Like it was like going up a bit with Dave Rennie, and then sack him, and then Eddie Jones, and then Eddie Jones, and then it's like a bit of a, I don't know, they're going up and down here, and particularly down at the moment. So it's just, I don't know what to think here at the moment. From a Wallaby perspective, I feel bad for them. I really just feel bad for them because the commentators made a lot of good points about how it's not just about Eddie Jones. It's about the whole. It's about Rugby Australia on a whole and how they've been, how they've managed, I guess, Australian rugby. How the arguments, of course, in terms of and going back to Super Rugby, just in terms of if 5 teams is the right call, they should probably bring it down to 3. Get 2 other teams in, make the sides obviously a bit, compete a bit better in terms of Super Rugby to, make these sides, I don't know, go higher and kind of compete in terms of semifinals or even final in Super Rugby, not just being the Brumbies, of course, but yeah, look, yeah, I just feel bad for them. Really do feel bad for them. But yeah, well, I mean, what's your take, obviously, on that situation?
Oh, it's a tricky one for the Wallabies because I've been saying it for a little while. I feel like they could bring in 2 or 3 new coaches over the next 2 or 3 years and the results would stay the same. Eddie Jones, of course, a lot of people are saying it's down to him, but we've got to remember Australian rugby was in trouble before that man made his way onto the scene.
Exactly.
The players, I look at this Wallabies squad, I look at their team. The fact that they went with such a young side was a risk in its own right, but you look at the players and you think, if this was any other side in the top 10 around the world, would they even get a chance? And some of those players you look at, I'm going to use an example, and I don't like to use examples, but I'm going to. Dave Parecki. Does Dave Parecki make it into any other starting lineup in the top 10 at the moment in the World Rugby rankings?
No.
Does he even have a bench spot? Like, there's multiple players for the Australians.
But the thing with him is that like he's also at the at the end of his career as well. So it's not like I wouldn't use him as the kind of the example because he's one of those
Maybe
players
we should because he's the captain. He's the guy who's supposed to be stepping up, leading by example.
But
for
they
the
switch captains every
Australians.
single week. That's the thing with the Wallabies. Like Eddie Jones he's probably had 8 captains since he's joined. So I don't really look at the captaincy anything more in terms of the Wallabies because they haven't really had a nailed on captain since Michael Hooper. So it's from a captain's, and then that's another thing that I literally don't understand the meaning behind changing your captain. Like, what are you trying to do? Is this like pleasing every single player? Like, oh, let's see what you could do at captain. Like, it's like, choose a captain, let him lead. It's
See, the slight problem they've got though is those injuries as well that have been plaguing them since
like,
about
I understand
2022.
that, of course. Yeah, with Skeleton, of course, he is
like,
the captain, but it's just look, we'll see what happens in that front. But I definitely do agree with you that it was a big risk to obviously go of a more of a young, just go towards the young rather than stick with the old in terms of this squad. But yeah, I mean, looking back, like it's definitely been, well, it's now seen as the wrong choice. And I mean, I even saw like Bernard Foley on Twitter being like, hey, look what happened. Like, kind of just like, a bit of a question mark there. But yeah, I mean,
the biggest problem as well for them is now they're in that scenario of like half of those older guys, like Quade Cooper, like they aren't going to come back. If Eddie Jones is like, do you want to come join up with the Wallabies
this
again?
Was the last time. This was the last time they could have played a World Cup. Like this was so big, the decision Eddie Jones made, where he didn't choose Quade Cooper, he didn't choose Bernard Foley, he didn't choose Michael Hooper. Like there's a list of others, by the way, but just those are like the name 3 I can think of on the top of my head. And look, I feel bad because those 3 players are, in their own rights, have been great for the Wallabies. Actually, when you look back at all the performances for the Wallabies, they've been excellent. Like probably they pull out 10 out of 10 performances for the Wallabies. So not to include them in this side, it's really I don't know. It's a big call, but again, I guess Eddie Jones is obviously trying to make his mark on the side as a new coach. So I can obviously understand from a coaching perspective why he did it, but I don't know. Why would you ruin why would you not ruin? That's the wrong word. Why would you change something that's kind of working? Or I don't know. It's a bit of a weird thing because again, is it even working? I'm going back and forth because
as well with the fact that he might be heading to Japan. Everything that he said about trying to build that squad towards 2027, now all the players are questioning that, going, well, if you were leaving, like you've set us up. We now have to try and rebuild from the worst ever World Cup result that we've ever had.
This is like,
because we have never not made it out of the group stages. Like he's pretty much just said to the players, "Oi, haha, bye."
Oi. I'll put this question on to you then, because hypothetically, if Eddie Jones was to leave, leave or get sacked by Rugby Australia, who would then be his successor? Like, who would be out there in terms of the candidates that you would put straight into the conversation? Because for me, I can't think of one name immediately. Like, I can think because am I wrong? It's like the one name which I can think of now, but I think he's actually gone to the Highlanders is Jamie Joseph, right? Has Jamie Joseph gone to the Highlanders? Is he the new coach for them?
I believe so. I know Ian Foster will be looking for a job, but I don't think he'd send him to Aussie.
Yeah, I mean, there's Steve Hansen. I'm not sure if he'll
get Steve back. Steve will sort
get Steve Hansen. Yeah, that'd be funny. That would be. Oh my gosh, he'd be. Yeah, that would not be good. But I mean, that's not going to happen. But I'm trying to think. Is there a coach out there?
The problem that they've got.
There is. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I actually did say this a few days ago. Bring Michael Cheika back.
You think? Do you think he'll want to come back though, in the way that he was dismissed?
I think he's the coach. You know me. I've always backed Michael Cheika. I think he's one of the best, most underrated coaches there is in World Rugby, or who in terms of coaches in Rugby's ever had. I think he's such an underrated coach. Like he was brilliant for the Wallabies. He took them to the final. I mean, I think he's the right coach for this. Like, maybe I'm wrong, by the way, because again, this is all hypothetical. We'll see what happens in terms of Eddie Jones if he is to stay on and all of that. But he's personally the guy I would look to immediately, because I think he's done well, obviously, in terms of the past with Australia. He's now taken the Pumas to the next level in terms of what they need to be. They've had a bit of a resurgence, under him, and yeah, he's obviously got a lot of impressive performances under them as well. So, look, I would personally look at him. I mean, let me know. Like, is there another coach you would have your eye on, but that I haven't thought of yet?
I think the biggest problem is you're not just coaching the Australian side, you're also having to deal with Australian media, which I think from the last few months we've learned is one of the most annoying out there.
Yes.
So no coach wants to have to go through that. Like Eddie Jones,
that's the
one of
role of
those
Eddie.
interviews,
Yeah.
he looked like he showed up pissed because he just didn't care. He was like,
Yeah,
mate,
it's
get a life. See you later.
I just find it funny because
that's what he's
literally
doing again.
before this game, beforehand, like the press conference beforehand, he was like, "Yeah, you know what? The boys are confident. We're going to do it. I've never felt more confident going into this one. We have a winning mentality under our belts. So whatever he said, like, he was like, we're gonna win the game. Like you just see the scoreline. Like, what are you on about? It's like I don't know.
And then after the game, he took all responsibility. He said it's all on me. But like, I don't know. The man's playing mind games, but he's playing on a different kind of spectrum than anyone understands. Like I don't know what he's thinking in terms of how it all loops over, but
yeah, like I understand why he's obviously done that because again, you have to understand. I mean, as we all know, Eddie Jones is a big name in terms of the out of all the coaches there is out there, and he again when you have this young group, he's kind of told them, yeah, look, I'm going to put all the kind of the spotlight on me. I'll take the the heat for everything. Let the heat off you guys, and then just allow you guys to play your footy. But again, it hasn't worked out, and it's gonna be an issue now. Where again after this World Cup, they're gonna obviously have this big board meeting in the Middle East, with Rugby Australia and him, and look at this and be like, okay, how can we change this? What do we have to do to make this change? Like, do we what is the first change that needs to happen to, I don't know, progress, going into that World Cup where they host? Because again, I mean, we've talked about this a lot before, but like how the great thing about Australia, for the future is that they have a Lions tour and this World Cup, so they have two different kind of stages, to say the least, to kind of make a front and kind of make a name for themselves going into that World Cup, which they're hosting, and making a name for themselves in that one as well. So, I mean, what would be your kind of like to finish off the this talking about this game? Like, what would be your kind of game plan, or how do you look ahead, and after going out, following this kind of this game?
I think for the Australians, of course, a win over Portugal is absolutely crucial here. But even if they play well in that game, I feel like the damage is slightly already done. But at least they can say, well, we've beaten a side that, to be honest, I don't know how Australia come into that game up against Portugal as favourites in terms of current form. But for Australia, I think it's just about trying to find some sort of positive out of this World Cup, because at the moment they haven't really got that much of one. The biggest losing margin up against the Welsh. Once again, we need to credit Wales, though, for what they were able to do in that game.
And biggest loss in the World Cup as well.
Yeah, the crazy thing is Australia only conceded 3 tries. So if you work on the theory that if the discipline was a bit better, if they were actually able to run that ball back at the Welsh without dropping the ball so often, this game could have been a lot closer. Like some people were anticipating. I said within 5 points I thought it would be, but that was assuming that Australia were going to show up playing like a side that wanted to win, and not a side that looked like they were already on the plane.
Exactly, and it's going to be very fast to see, obviously, what Australia do, obviously going into the future. Just after this World Cup, really, in terms of the amount of changes they'll have to make in terms of the squad, in terms of that starting 15 especially. But we'll see what happens again. But before we obviously end this review, we're gonna go over our player of the round, match of the round, and the unexpected player who stood out, to say the least.
Still haven't quite got the title of that last one, do we? There's
still not a good title that we found out yet, but you guys get the gist. But we're going to start with you this time. Who is your player of the round?
Player of the round, right.
Yeah.
So I always try and incorporate who's played who in terms of my decision making. I would honestly say, in terms of competitive games, that's the other tricky thing, because we saw some pretty one-sided affairs throughout this round of rugby, but then we also saw some relatively close games. I would honestly probably go with Gareth Anscombe as like a decent shout because of the fact that he was supposed to be coming off the bench maybe around 60, 70 minutes, but instead had to start the game almost with Dan Bigger only playing for around that 10 minutes and just find his feet so early. So I'd probably give him definitely an honourable shout there. And in fact, I'll probably go with him because I feel like,
as I say,
thinking about it, it's very hard to pick just the one, isn't it? But for team, I'll say Portugal. The fact that they got themselves a draw up against Georgia, and they have actually broken the trend in every game so far of this Rugby World Cup, apart from that one. The team that is leading at halftime has gone on to win.
Exactly.
23 from 23 games. Starting to get a bit spooky now, but that game was the trend breaker. Georgia were in front at halftime. Portugal fight back, getting themselves that last-minute try. So, I will go with Portugal as my team that did very well. And then the wording of the last one, it's the player who we think's not doing well, but he's going to do well.
Yeah. To be honest, I think there's an easy one, but...
well, you can have him then, and I'll take the other one. Who's the honourable mention of you?
No, but I want you to say yours first, because it'll be funny to see if we've said the same player or not. Let me see what you think, what you're thinking of then.
See, I could be really harsh or really annoying and go with Harry Arundel.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think anyone expected him to score 5 tries.
Exactly.
Was he going to be either of your two?
He was in my conversation for sure.
Okay, well I'll go with him then.
Think of someone else. Actually, that's a good pick, by the way, because it's one of those where I don't think a lot of fans will be there won't be a lot of backlash to that for sure, because he's a great player, and it's one of those where he got his first job obviously in this tournament and he just stood out. So I think that's a great that's actually a great one. I mean, I'll go for the player of the match for player of the round. I actually was also going to go for Gareth Anscombe. He's actually the one I was thinking of. But again, similar to you like last round, I'm going to probably have to change mine because, we're going to go for something a bit different here. Do you go for someone from Ireland? It's a bit of a weird one because there wasn't in all honesty, I actually don't think there was a player who stood out. Because I think it was such an intense game overall that even though I think it was Bundyaki who did win man of the match, it wasn't really a man of the match performance. I know that may sound weird, but it's like there was a lot of players you could have given it to in that game in particular. So
I think Josh Van Flair was probably the best of the forwards for Ireland, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Even because of the fact that his finger was the wrong way after a minute
I
of
saw
the game.
That. Oh, jeez. Yeah, that was not the best outlook there. But I guess look, if I had to give mine player of the tournament, well, not player of the tournament, but player of the round, I'm actually leaving it to Buffeli. I just think that Buffeli kind of did well, overall in that game. I know it's not really like a standout one that it's kind of like one of those ones where you kind of expect him to do well, but at the end of the day, they got the win. They did it through him, so he's probably my player of the round. I guess in terms of the match of the round, I mean, I have to go with Ireland South Africa. I mean, that was the most tense and exciting game I've ever witnessed live. So that has to be the match of the round. And just obviously just incredible to see 1 and 2 go against each other and just go full front and just it was exciting to watch and just obviously just buzzing to be there in person. But in terms of my unexpected player, again, we're going to have to work on that title for the future. So let us obviously know in the comments what you guys think of that. But my unexpected player for this round, I think, was Duhan van der Merwe. I just think he's one of those players where, again, he always does well for the Scottish. But he turned up and it's kind of what he needed. And obviously, he's gained that momentum once again. And the Scottish can obviously move on. But with him doing, well, back in the form of his life, to say the least. It's what you kind of need in terms of the Scottish and how they play. But again, we're gonna leave it there, guys. Obviously, thank you for watching. Definitely like the video, guys. Subscribe, check out our respective channels, and we'll see you guys next time.